Welcome to Mathville. I'll be your mayor today, Mr. Z. We're doing 9-5 word problems of filling quadratic equations. So just taking a look at some of the things we talked about before. With graphing, we talked about finding the vertex and the roots, axis of symmetry stuff. That is going to be helpful here. So remember, when a graph crosses the xy axis, right? My parabola goes up and down. All right, this vertex point, remember, is the height. So the y value is our height at the highest point or lowest point, and these two values, the roots, represent where the graph hits the ground again. So, if I'm hitting a golf ball, let's say, and travels up here, lands down over here, we can figure out how far it took to go in the air and land, what's the highest point, and all that stuff. So that's the type of thing we're going to be talking about here. So the y value is actually coming from the vertex, which is like, what's the y value when you plug in the axis of symmetry, the x value from the axis of symmetry. So those are the things we're going to be referring to here. I am going to unfortunately delete that really nice picture there for a second, and let's talk about letter A. Now, a lot of these questions on the exam are going to be questions that involve algebraically. So you're going to see that word. If you see that word and you don't solve it using algebra, factoring, quadratic formula, which we'll get to, completing the square, we'll get to, you are going to lose half credit. So make sure you know how to do that. So how far apart are the points where the frame is fastened to the ground? That means we want to know where the roots are, right? The roots of the zeros. So remember, step one is to take our equation and plug 0 in for y. So 0 equals negative 3x squared plus 24x. Remember, we don't want a negative in front, so we're going to go ahead and divide everything by a -1 here. And we're going to get 0 equals 3x squared. And now it's minus 24x. 24x. All right. So then I'm going to factor. So the first thing I was looking for is a GCF, which is 3 and then x. And I get left with x minus 8. And then I do my zero product property. So either 3x is equal to 0, which means x is equal to 0 when we divide both sides by 3. Okay. Or x minus 8 is equal to 0, which means x is going to be equal to 8. So how far are points is the frame? It's 8 units. Okay. And it looks like it's feet. So height in feet, any value of x. So we're going to be talking about 8 feet here. Okay. So the points are located about 8 units or 8 feet apart. All right. How tall is the frame at its highest point? So remember, we talked about, we want to figure out now, when I do this parabola looking thing, I want to know how tall is this. So the first thing I have to do is figure out the x value. Okay, what's the x value? And then plug it in and determine the y value, which is that height. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our axis of symmetry equation, right? So x equals negative b over 2a. We'll talk about another way to do this afterwards. Now in the original equation, which was right here, okay, b is 24, so x equals, it's a negative of 24 over 2 times a, which is negative 3. And so this turned into x equals negative 24 over negative 6, which means x is equal to 4. All right, and we're going to plug that into the equation. So y equals negative 3 times 4 squared plus 24 times 4. All right, and then we can take our calculator. Save. Give me a calculator here. We got negative 3 times 4 squared plus 24 times 4. Just double checking that we did that right. Looks good. And now I get 48. Okay, so I am just going to clean up the 4 here. There we go. So y equals 48. Okay, and that means the frame is 48 feet tall at its highest point. All right, and that's question number 1. Okay, so number 2, we got our weekly profit. The function is given right here, p equals negative 0.4x squared plus 40x minus 360. That's representing dollars. Okay, and it produces fruit jams. So x is the number of jars of jams, and x would be the profit in dollars. So we want to find the number of jars of jams that should be produced to maximize weekly profits. And once again, and when we're talking about our graph here, this is a concave down because of the negative. So the maximum number of jars is going to be our x. So we want to sell this many jars, and you can see that our profit is going to be that y value at the top. All right, profit, y value, x jars. So we're going to do the same thing we did on part 2 up there. We're going to find the axis of symmetry and then plug it in. So x equals negative b over 2a. So x equals, b is 40, so it's negative 40 over 2 times negative 0.4. All right, so we're going to go ahead and plug that into the calculator. So negative 40, and then we're going to hit Control Divide to get the fraction bar. All right, and then it's 2 times negative 0.4. Hit enter, and we get 50. All right, so this turns into x is equal to 50. So they should sell 50 jars of jam to maximize weekly profit. All right, and then we want to find the maximum profit. So we're going to take the p value, we're going to find p, so negative 0.4 times 50 squared plus 40 times 50 minus 360. And remember, this is going to be equal to the amount of money they're making. So keep that in mind. So negative 0.4 times 50 squared plus, we got 40 times 50 minus 360, just double checking, looks like we're good, and that's 640. And there's our maximum profit. All right, and so we'll state that again. So the maximum profit is $640. Okay. Number 3, the length of a rectangle is 3 inches more than its width. So we have a rectangle. The area is 40 square inches. What is the length in inches of the rectangle? So we have a rectangle. The length is 3 inches more than its width, w. So we'll call the width w, and this would be 3 inches more, so that's w plus 3. And we know the area is 40. Okay, so remember the area of any rectangle is length times width. So we can plug 40 in for the area. The length is w plus 3, and the width is w. So what we're going to do is solve for w. Okay, so the first step is going to be to make a proper w. The second step is going to be, because there's a parentheses here, to distribute, right? So we get 40 equals w squared plus 3w. Now, because there's a squared here, this is a quadratic equation. So think of the steps to solve. Number 1, I got to get in standard form and equal to 0. So I'm going to move the 40 over to the other side. Okay, so 0 is equal to w squared plus 3w minus 40. Number 2, we were going to figure out how to factor this. So checklist, no GCF, 3 terms means we're using trinomial, and I want this to multiply to negative 40 and add to positive 3. So I know that I'm going to end up with W and W, and because it's a minus and a plus, one negative and one positive, and this plus tells me that the larger sign is going to be positive. So the numbers that multiply to 40, right? We have 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 3 doesn't work, 4 and 10 works, 5 works with 8, 6, 7, 8 works, but we have 8 already, so we know we're good and we can stop. The only way to get 3 is to use 5 and 8, and now the larger number is positive and the smaller number is negative. So it's W plus 8 and W minus 5. Then we do our zero product, so W plus 8 is equal to 0, or W minus 5 is equal to 0. And then we finish our solving, so we end up with 2 answers. Either W is equal to negative 8, right? Man, these W's are killing me today. W, not really. Or W equals 5. Not doing well in the dubs. Okay. Terrible. But get the idea here. So there's our 2. How about negative snowman? Negative 8. All right. Perfect. All right. Now, we can't accept this answer. We have to reject that answer of negative 8. So we're going to put a slash through the equal sign to indicate that x can W. There's no way for W to be negative 8. Okay. And the reason why is we can't have a negative length. Can't have negative length. All right. So this answer is out. Okay. Not going to fly. So our answer here is 5. All right. So it asks about the length. That's all we have to answer. So we say the length of the rectangle is, and we know that this is basically just going to be 5 plus 3, which is 8. And so that's going to be the length of our rectangle. All right. And it's inches. And there's our answer. One more, hopefully, question on the back. John and Sarah are saving money for a car. The total amount of money John will save is given by the function. The total amount of money Sarah will save is given by that function. How many weeks will have the same amount of money? Great question. So in order to have the same amount of money, we have to set f of x, right, equal to g of x. And so this is just a linear quadratic system. That's it. So f of x is 60 plus 5x. G of x is x squared plus 46. All right. Hold on 2 seconds. All right. Just want to double check. We're going to end up with something nice here. So we're going to end up, remember, everything on one side first. It's a quadratic, so get it equal to 0. And we want to keep the x squared term positive, which it is already. So we're going to move the 5x over. We don't have an x term, so that's going to go right in the middle there. And we're going to move the 60 over, and that's going to get taken away from the 46. Okay, so we're moving these two at the same time. So 0 equals, standard form, the x squared goes first, then the minus 5x, and then we're going to actually subtract away the 60 and 46, leaving us with negative 14. All right, so once again, now we can factor. So is there a GCF? No. 3 terms. We're doing trinomial again. So I need negative 14, and negative 5, which is going to be 7 and 2. And because the 5 is negative, we want a negative 7. So it's x plus and x minus. The larger number is negative, and then I solve. So either x plus 2 is equal to 0, which means x is equal to negative 2, or x minus 7 equals 0, which means x is equal to 7. Remember we talked about last time, we're talking about weeks. We can't have negative weeks, right? So we're going to reject this. So we can write that for ourselves. We can't have negative weeks. Now you know I normally type this out when I'm using this pen. Okay. And so we know that they would have, right, John and Sarah. John, Sarah, will have the same amount of money saved after 7 weeks of fun. All right, that is it, guys, for today. Thanks for joining me on our quest to solve the quadratics. We got one more lesson tomorrow, and then remember your delta math assignment, which you can start working on now if you're interested. Those questions are that you should know how to do them are up there. Tomorrow's a little review. All right, guys, have a great day.